So I'm sitting here with my meditation teacher from Amsterdam. This is Adi Iksan. And
Hello to you all.
I thought we just have a talk together, and then maybe some interesting stuff pops up. So yeah, I wanted to start with equanimity. Because I think that especially on the path of vipassana, the moment that you reach equanimity is a very important point. So I was kind of, maybe you can elaborate on what is the moment that somebody switches from not having equanimity to having equanimity. Could you maybe talk a little bit about this short moment in which that changes?
Well, it is also considered as a progress. So in the vipassana, the moment of equanimity is actually a stage within the development of your insight, when suddenly you become uninterested with all the conditionality of nama and rupa, so from a physicality and mentality. But this point can sometimes be, how do you call it, can sometimes be misunderstood as kind of neutral feeling, because it is not a neutral feeling.
Mm-hmm.
This equanimity is something that arises as to the effect of several very profound experiences regarding the dukkha side of nama and rupa.
Mm-hmm.
So in such a way, through the dukkha side of nama and rupa, you get some understanding of the nature of body and mind, that you gain some distance from the experience itself.
Mm-hmm.
So experiencing the pain, experiencing the all kinds of inconveniency.
Mm-hmm.
But you really get the understanding that all that is inconvenient is actually related to either the physicality, the conditioning of the physicality, and the conditionality of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So once you see that even the mind is conditioned in such a way that it is unable to be influenced by your own will, then there will come a point that you will become disinterested with mind and with rupa. So at that point, there will be you will see moments arising that even when it feels like you are not being bothered anymore by
Mm-hmm. Apathy.
You cannot say that it's apathy. So it is some kind of not being affected anymore by the conditionality of mind and physicality, because you already have seen so much of the conditionality of mind and matter,
Mm-hmm.
and that you just know that whatever you will do, it is there will be no
Solution.
to to this conditionality.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point onwards, the mind will become more or less uninterested with mind and matter. And then it's just the point where this it starts to become equanimous.
Mm-hmm. So it's more like you've seen how hopeless it gets. Like there's no way you can have
Yes.
any control, and then by seeing this many times, you give it up, you let it go.
Yes, you let it go. What you are letting go is actually not you are letting go the discipline, or you are not letting go the the path to proceed further, but what you are letting go is the illusion that there is a person or there is an instance in the mind that is able to control the mind and physicality.
Mm-hmm.
So this part is what is becoming more clear to you. So when this sense of knowing that actually whatever the will wants, the mind and the matter goes through its own program, through its own way, then you will be stopping trying to change the reality as it appears to you. And once you start stopping or giving up trying to change the reality, then you will slowly go into the state of equanimity.
Mm-hmm.
So this state of equanimity is also not only that you are not bothered anymore, but because of by mentality and physicality, but because you are not bothered anymore, the mind becomes very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it becomes very clear, and you are able to focus on the things that are passing through the sense doors.
Mm-hmm.
So in another sense, this equanimity will also bring you to a more composed state of the mind. So even when you have actually giving up trying to change the reality as it appears to you, at the same time you become more composed, more aloof, and more clarity is being achieved while looking at the things that do appear to you, to the
Mhm.
mind.
And why does it lead to more clarity?
Because you are not disturbed anymore by the conditionality.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the Pali word for this phase is of course Sankarupa Kanyana, which actually means the equanimous towards conditionality.
Mm.
Yeah. So it is the part that is played by the conditionality, which you are becoming equanimous to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then with this equanimity, your mind has less clinging and less craving, which is then needed, or which then develops to such a low level to allow entrance into nibbana. Or
Well, that is another. There are still a few steps before that might
but
happen.
eventually, that's
Yes,
the plan.
So, while once you achieve this state of equanimity, after several times, you will see that even the state of equanimity is actually not yet the end of the path.
Mhm.
So you will try to see for yourself, like trying to look back at what was actually the the starting point that led you to come to that point of equanimity. So you something like do some what do you call it? Looking back to the whole process, reflecting on what have been achieved up to that moment, and at the same time you will become more and more conscious of the existing of this deep desire to actually be free from this conditionality. So not only the ability to be equanimous, but to be totally free from any kind of conditionality at all. And from that point on, it would be the mind will then try to seek another path,
A way out.
A way out, yeah. So this will then lead to a state that you will see that there is nothing actually more to be found in the realm of physicality and mentality. And if it is supported by other conditions, then the mind will start to reorientate itself towards nibbana. And this part is actually the part that really depends on how much merits you have and paramis you have built up.
So
in life.
in theory, you could stay or get stuck at the equanimity.
You will not stuck at the equanimity, because equanimity will by itself pass away. But there is a chance that you will only succeed in the what we call the worldly vipassana, without making any jump or making any transformation of the consciousness to a supramundane consciousness.
Mhm.
That is possible.
So
and
you
that
you
part-
fall back in the stages, or
No, you actually don't, because you really know what the world is about. Yeah. It's just that the mind doesn't make this this change.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know that actually there is in this world there is nothing more to be thought of. So that part is really clear to you. That everything what you are facing in this world is there is nothing to be looked around about, because it is not it is giving no true happiness, no true relief of any kind of suffering or any kind of it's another word for it which is better, suffering or inconvenience.
yeah. So you're saying that somebody can reach the stage of equanimity
And pass.
but then not get to the
Yes.
final moment
to-
of cessation.
Yes.
And you say it's due to karma.
Yes.
So this is basically out of your control.
It is out of our control. Yes. Yeah.
But then I was wondering, is there anything somebody can do to make sure they reach the stage of equanimity at a faster
Well, that is
rate?
implying that there is control, no?
But from a relative point of view, of a technique point of view, which you're applying a technique in the beginning.
Again, yes. Again, the technique is not the solution. Yes, I think we already, how do you call it? For us, it's clear that the technique is just a tool.
Yeah.
So the real jump is actually the arising of the moment of wisdom, and this arising of the moment of wisdom is not. Does not depend on the technique, it does not depend on the method, but it does depend on how you are able to integrate the Eightfold Path in the life. So that is where the answer actually lies. So you always have to come back to the Eightfold Path, and for vipassana you put it into one, and we make the integrated part of the Eightfold Path is becoming the ekayana, so the one and only path, which is the integrated Eightfold Path, and that is what you are trying to achieve through all those techniques. So it is not the techniques which lead to this moment of wisdom, but it is the accumulated merit by trying to realize the Eightfold Path.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But then, are there any tips that you could give people to more quickly reach this point of equanimity? Is there any advice you could give, or is there any way? I mean, having the right techniques or tools often means that, you know, if somebody reaches or develops meditation or they don't, so the tools, they have a very important role. So
Yes.
are there any tools that you could use to reach that point of
Well,
equanimity?
also in this point we also have to be very careful in stating something, because you cannot generalize things as, for example, this tool is right for this object. This tool is right for that object. Really depends also on your own situation. So your own state of mind. It depends on your own character, your own temperament.
Mhm.
So all these tools have to be considered carefully according to this to the person that you are yourself.
Mhm.
So when reaching certain types of experiences, you have to actually look back to yourself. So the answer doesn't mean that the answer has to come from outside of yourself, but you have to look into your own practice and see how have you been using these tools. This is the part where you have to be conscious about how you are performing your own practice,
Mhm.
how you are using the tools, and so on. So you cannot say that there is, generally speaking, after this you do that, after this you do that.
Mhm.
It depends very much on the situation and the mood that you are yourself
Mhm.
in during this when it is happening.
Yeah.
But generally is and this is for all kinds of experience in vipassana. Always keep the distance. Always keep the distance between the experience and yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah. This is the only thing you have to consider. So once you are able to keep this distance, you can check it, because if there is enough distance, if you are facing something which is difficult, then you can see that there will be no need arising in your mind to overcome or to try to remove this difficulty.
Mhm.
It is just seeing it appearing.
Yeah.
So once you have this ability, then you will go through the passes, the dark passes of the vipassana, how do you call it, inside levels of
Dukkha-jnanas.
experience, yes. And you will come by yourself, or by itself is better, by itself, you will come to this state of equanimity.
Mhm. So, while progressing in vipassana, you start off with the notion that you are meditating and you are doing a technique, and the more you progress, the more you realize that
It's out of your hands.
it's out of your hands.
Yeah.
The technique is doing it by itself,
Yeah.
and that then culminates in an equanimity. Or first, it culminates in suffering.
Yes, I mean it. What it culminates is actually in insight in the nature of each element of your person. So the physical part, and then all the elements in the mentality part.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, what is fear? What is disgust? You try to see the true nature of fear, the true nature of disgust.
Mm-hmm.
What is this feeling of being imprisoned in in your own body and mind?
Mm-hmm.
You try to see that the true nature of this feeling imprisoned. So once this you see this these knowledges, and they build and they culminate up to a certain point, then you will see by itself how it transforms into this state of equanimity.
Yeah. In the West, I often notice that people have this image of meditation as being this something where you kind of you let go of everything, and you also let go of having any goals or wanting to achieve. So it's basically whenever you talk about meditation and you talk about wanting to reach a certain level in your meditation or a certain stage, people often respond with this sort of notion like, hey, you're meditating, why do you have any goals? That's weird, that's not supposed to be meditation. But the way I see it is that, you know, Buddhism, which we're talking about, has a very clear goal, and there are very clear milestones.
Yeah.
So what do you have to say about this notion that people have that meditation has no goals?
I understand the question. So these the no goal aspect is of course also a part of the training, but it is actually more. You have to look at it in the context of letting go the egoistic goals. And so these egoistic goals, which we are actually conditioned with, these are the goals that can make us unhappy. Not ourselves, but also sometimes our egoistic needs just makes other people unhappy. So the part of the goals that you have to let go is actually all the goals that are connected with this perspective of the ego. Yeah. And then there are, of course, more egoless objectives, which sometimes really needs offering from your part. These goals has to be trained. Yeah. So it is in a sense it is like training yourself in more or less wholesome goals, and letting go of the egoistic type of goals. Yeah. So this is how we approach to the concept of goal. So a goal as concept is just a concept. It's not either good or bad. But once it's colored with egoistic needs, then it might become unwholesome. So we have to train this part of ourselves which can support the wholesome achievements, and training ourselves also to become happy pursuing those wholesome goals, and then it becomes the way it is done in the meditation.
Yeah. But then you acknowledge that there are goals, that there is something to achieve.
Yes.
And also that there is progression, because I feel that, you know, people often you know, even saying that, you know, somebody is a better meditator than somebody else.
Yeah, but that is I think not a goal. I mean, that is also not the progress. The progress can only be seen by yourself, in the sense that you can feel that you're becoming more and more happy, and you are becoming more and more, or less dependent on physical and mental needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what about having a lot of ambition and starting out with wanting to achieve a lot in your meditation, which then has a very beneficial influence on your motivation,
Yeah.
because then you're very motivated, and then you want to learn, you want to understand, you start meditating a lot, even though it's coming from this sort of egotistical motivation. But then because you're meditating a lot, slowly but surely you're gaining the insights, and you're losing the egotistical side.
Yes.
So
But that's the part of the training. So the training is recognizing through your own practice how your own egoistic needs in the beginning seems to support you, but in the longer term it hits you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So this part, once you see this by yourself,
Mhm.
then you can be able to relativate your own egoistic needs.
Mhm.
And once you are able to relativate it, then you are not longer a slave of it.
Mhm.
And once you are not a slave of it, it becomes an instrument for you.
Yeah.
And from that point on, it depends on in which situation you are.
Mhm.
So you can use this as a right answer to any situation that you are engaged with, without prioritizing your own egoistic needs.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
it has to come from your own experience.
Yeah.
If it comes from the mind, or if it comes like an idea into the mind, then you will have this inner conflict.
Mhm.
One is trying to tell you that you have to be altruistic, and the other part will be trying to say, no, that's foolish. be egoistic, because that's the reality of life.
Mhm.
So if you have this conflict, then you are further from home.
Mhm.
So you have to see this moment when the egoistic needs is actually hampering yourself.
Yeah.
And once you see it by yourself,
Then you need to
you can
let it go.
You can let it by nature. So
Yeah.
without pushing yourself to do it.
Mhm. But you have to recognize
You have to be able to recognize
that it's not
it.
working anymore.
Yes, and you have to recognize it when it's happening.
Yeah. But don't you think that, especially, or in the beginning, it's almost a necessity to have this sort of ambitious attitude, because the beginning is going to be very difficult, right? You're going to endure a lot of suffering, and learning meditation is very difficult. So having pride and having ambition propels you through this sort of pain period.
Yes. Well,
And without having this ego,
Yeah.
you would basically
yes,
give
but
up.
that's true. Yeah. So in the beginning, you have to know in which part of the journey you are. If
Mhm.
you're in the beginning, like any other thing, when you have to start, you have to have a very very strong, how do you call it, determination
Yeah.
to achieve it.
Mhm.
And this part is might be egoistic,
Mhm.
might be not. Even if you are taking, for example, the notion of I want to free myself from suffering,
Mhm.
there is still an egoistic notion in it.
Yeah.
In the beginning,
Yeah.
especially, because the one you are freeing is yourself. You are not freeing your neighbors. You are not freeing your friends, but it is you yourself
Mhm.
that you are trying to free,
Mhm.
to liberate. Yeah.
But then to go back to equanimity, because you said that you have equanimity, and
Yeah.
at the same time you have this desire to be freed.
Yeah. So this.
But what isn't there some egotistical part in this desire?
The difference is between the equanimity that we are talking about just a few minutes ago, and this part is, these are two different points on the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you cannot compare those two points. So the beginning is really a beginning where you have to put everything together. You have to put the egoistic needs, and during this process, you will see that to a certain point, it will bring you to progress,
Mm-hmm.
and after a certain point, it will punish you continuously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because things are not working anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Until you get so fed up with these experiences that the mind actually distances itself from the object that you are following, which is the body and your own state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then the equanimity arises.
Mm-hmm.
But still, when you look back, you will be asking yourself, what was the purpose of this, or how did I do this? So you can even pinpoint the points where you can see, well, in this part, actually the part of the ego was more than the part of the technique of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
More the part of the ego was being stronger than the part of mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And so you will come to this acknowledgement of what actually had brought you to that point of equanimity, and then you will also therein recognize the part of the desire to become liberated. And once you're able to see that desire as well as being part of this, what you call the driven by this egoistic needs, you're also be able to relativate this part of
So you let go the wanting to be.
actually you almost let go anything except one thing, and that is attending the mind to the right object. Dus in Pali you call it yoniso manasikara, having the right object observed. Yeah. And this is the part
This is
of
the key.
This is actually the key, yes.
And you
This
leave
you
all
leave
behind,
all-
and only the key
yes.
you then use.
Yes.
And what if you don't leave it behind? You cannot.
If you don't leave it behind, you will be repeating the whole process again and again until it becomes very clear and solid to the mind. And so because you can move through different levels of insight without really maturing and getting to the essence of that insight level. And this is what we call this, that you go through repeating the cycle, repeating the cycle on and on until it becomes very, very, very clear, all aspects of it, from the coarse side to the very refined part of it, where all those elements of suffering, change,
Mm-hmm.
and inability to control can be manifested.
Yeah.
And this will lead to the moment of wisdom. And if it's supported by merit, then the change will come.
Mm-hmm. And what change will come then?
This change is what we call the experiencing the supramundane.
Yeah.
And we better not talk about the content of what is supramundane, but it will be a state of mind that will be you will not be able to experience when you are still in the mundane mode.
Mm-hmm.
The effect of it will be that certain characteristics of your personality will be erased forever.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is the way you can also check yourself how genuine this experience was.
According to the 10 feathers,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's also possible to feel like you've had this moment, but then you find out that there wasn't a change,
Yes. And then
and it was something else, and then you have to redo it.
and then you have to redo it. Yes.
Yeah.
But there is some how do you call it? Some plus point gained when you gain this experience is that you surely know, for sure, that reality is not only confined to the mundane.
Mhm.
There is something else.
Yeah. So some feather,
Yes.
I don't know
This-
which one,
this-
but
This part of the illusion that only the tactile exists,
yeah.
that part will be you will have no doubt about it anymore, that it's not like that.
Yeah.
So, and this will help you to redo actually the whole process, because you know that this is not for nothing, but you are going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're also losing a little bit of doubt.
You are
in the
losing a
Dhamma.
bit. Yes.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I think this might be very advanced for practitioners, but to bring it back to the point of losing that trust in your own ego,
Yeah.
and sort of seeing that the egotistical motivations are actually leading to disappointment.
Yeah.
Is this also connected to a technique where you try to tax your own system, you try to overdo something to almost induce a disappointment? So you said that at the
Yes,
Mahasi
well-
Center you practice a lot of meditation and you sleep very little, so that you're very tired and you're
Yes.
very I would say grumpy, and it's not working, and that actually brings up more insight.
Yeah. So the way we be a little bit more more nuanced to this to the statement. It is like when we have our conditionality, this egoistic needs actually arises from our misperception about what we truly are. So we cannot recognize what we truly are, and because of this continuously interaction between mind and matter, we think that this body and mind, this body and consciousness, that it's you, that it's me.
Mm-hmm. This
And this is
identification.
this is guarded. This is guarded by a lot of conditions, which which keeps you believing that this is the only truth, this is the only reality.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the technique is some way aimed. It is aimed to open up your eyes, to make you able to see that what you call this body and consciousness is not just more than a conglomeration of body and consciousness. It's not the you at all. It's not the I at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a conglomeration of types of processes, of elements, and so
Five
on.
aggregates.
5 aggregates, as they call it.
Yeah.
But the conditionality is in such a way that it also put guards
Mm-hmm.
to it, to make to enable you to see the true nature of your own person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So among other, these gods are of course fear, fearing to lose yourself, disgust, this sense of being, sense of that everything will stay as it is, that you have always had things good enough. So these are quite good guarded, and the more
They guard the ego.
they
sort of.
guard the ego, yes.
Yeah. So if somebody is disgusted, they really feel like they are disgusted.
Gossip, yeah.
Yeah.
So when we start meditating and you go to a retreat and you sleep for 5 or 6 hours or
Or
3
or
or 4
4.
hours a day, what will happen is that the energy will not be sufficient to keep the gods alive. And this is what you...
So also when you're tired, then
Yeah.
you're more
Yeah.
grumpy.
So you become grumpy, and
Yeah.
once you become grumpy, you can see the effect of this grumpiness to the mind. You can see the effect of this grumpiness to the body. You can see the effect of having to endure this grumpiness.
But
And then
it strengthens the ego as well, right? So
to
you
a
need
point,
you need to have a
point,
lot of observation in order
To
to
a
really
point.
learn from it.
to a point that you still can endure it.
Mhm.
Yeah. But at a certain point, the ego will not be able to endure it anymore. And that will be the point where for you, the consciousness, of part of the consciousness, will be really easy to say, well, ego, this grumpiness will stay with you. You are not the real part of me. You stay there, and I will observe you. And then you will see this how this process can develop further, because you are able to relativate the self-sense. So of course all these techniques has somewhat, how do you call this, somewhat
Relevant.
constructed is somewhat constructed to bring down the natural guardians, the natural gods, that's supposed to keep the existence of the ego safe.
Mm.
But that's why you meditate. So that's why it's also important to know why you are doing the
Mhm.
meditation. So if you are trying to do this meditation purely only because of egoistic needs, for example, to feel, to experience calmness, or to experience for power, or to experience ecstasy, then you will see that it will not endure long,
Mm.
because the pain that has to be endured by the ego will be much more than the
Mhm.
fruits of these egoistic needs.
So you're actually trying to worsen the ego to such a point where the ego itself cannot take it anymore,
Yes.
and
Well,
then
we don't call it to worsen. It's just looking through a, how do you call it, a magnifier. Just like
you're trying to activate it.
Looking through a magnifier, everything becomes more. Becomes more.
You put more
bigger.
lights on it.
If you look through a magnifier, it becomes 10 times more bigger than it is,
Mhm.
so you can see more details in it. And just because of seeing this more details, you will see processes that are not yet being recognized before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, but you are deliberately trying to get more suffering in a way until there's a breaking point and you can detach, or there's not a breaking point and you,
Well,
you quit the retreat and you go
in this
home.
part, it is not only suffering in the sense that you suffer. It is also seeing the more subtle kind of suffering. Yeah? So subtle. The easy part of it is is the gross part of suffering, but the more subtle parts of suffering is very difficult to how do you call it, to trace and to recognize.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the meditation has to take all of it into consideration. So it's not only exaggerating the gross suffering, but it's actually more also understanding the existence of suffering in things that you seem for you to appear to be happiness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this requires, I think, a lot more than just grossly being overwhelmed by the gross type of pain, of gross type of suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it needs to go together with very precise observation.
Clarity always,
Yeah.
and wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that the experience is not wrongly, how do you call it, understood.
Mm-hmm. And what is then an example of it being wrongly understood?
For example, wrongly being understood is like when you experience pain,
Mm-hmm.
bodily pain, and you really notice that the pain is coming because having this pain from the bodily perception, then you make the understanding of, you make the conclusion that it is only when I have a body I will suffer, but if it's only a mind I will not suffer. This is a wrong conclusion, of course, because even when you have a mind and you don't have a body, you will still be able to suffer, because the suffering is actually in the way that the mind is constructed.
And it's responding to.
It's not only responding to body, but it is also how it is constructed, how consciousness is constructed.
Mm-hmm.
So the mechanism of the mind has to be understood.
And
So
that's
there
the
are a
clinging
lot of
mechanism.
Yeah, there are a lot of kinds of wrong understanding of such an experience. For example, experiencing a supramundane, how do you call it, experience, while you feel merged into the whole, into a greater whole,
Mm-hmm.
and you think that the self has gone and has merged with a greater being.
Mm-hmm.
There is only being, instead of there is no being and there is no self.
Mm-hmm.
So this is also sort of kind of wrong understanding.
So even if somebody has a moment of cessation and they feel like there was still being, then that means that there's still ignorance.
Of course, there are you will have
Because
a lot
it's like they believe in an eternal soul, like Atta.
yes, yeah.
But
There
then
are-
was it really a cessation that they had?
There is a cessation. There are a lot kinds of cessation. I mean, a deep sleep is also called a cessation, but it doesn't give you any wisdom at all. So
Mhm.
there has to be this part of wisdom. You should really play a role in it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you can test it with yourself when you see that if wisdom was really there, then you will certainly lose a part of your old personality, and the part that is following you, that is still there. You will see that there also is a change in the way you look at things.
Mm-hmm.
It will be certainly it will be more tolerant. Certainly it will be you will be more able to understand why different opinions exists, you will be less motivated by anger or by own desires or by your own ignorance. You will be able to see these moments when your mind is or your action is clouded by ignorance or by desire. You'll be able to note it, and you will feel less and less need to follow it, but you will still be able to have those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are in a pseudo cessation, then you will feel the opposite. You will feel, I have achieved something in my meditation. That you will feel that my opinion is the right one, and what others are saying is wrong. There is only one experience possible, and there are no other experiences possible. So you will make it more difficult for yourself. You will put actually more bonds on yourself instead of freeing yourself from illusions.
Yeah. So instead of subtracting,
It
you're adding up to. Okay.
Yeah.
So it is also dangerous in a way.
Well, it is. In one sense, it might be dangerous. In another sense, you will realize that what I said earlier, that it is not only this reality.
Oh, yeah.
So that is one point that is you will have more sense that that is not only our dimension, which is there are more dimensions to existence than the ones that we can perceive, and that all those different dimensions, they all have somewhat relation with what we are doing in this in our own part of dimensionality.
But then I have another question.
Yeah.
How do you see those other dimensions and those experiences? How do you put them together with sort of a scientific worldview?
Well, that is what I think. What we would say, does it lead to more enlightenment in your path? Does it lead more to the liberation, or doesn't it have anything to add to the liberation? If it doesn't have anything to add to the liberation, or it even might, how do you call it? Even might create problems, then we better leave the question unanswered. So, in my opinion, that is quite irrelevant for your own path. So there is actually no need to try to comprehend it. I mean, this is what Buddha meant with the handful of leaves in his hand. Is it more or less than the leaves in the forest? Of course, in the forest there are more leaves than in his hands. And the same way he said, and so is my teaching. My teaching doesn't care about all those leaves in the forest, but only those leaves that is conducive for my own liberation. Those are the ones that has to be known, and which is being thought. And we have to look at the same way, except, of course, when your profession is, for example, a mathematician, or what is
from physics.
Yeah, so physics.
Yeah.
Then it's important for you to understand. But
from a point of view of just being interested and thinking
again,
about
I
it.
think it's is it conducive for your practice? Yes or no? If you think it's conducive, then try to make. But there is surely a way to to come to a certain view on it.
Yeah.
But again, views are views.
Mhm.
It's not from the direct experience.
Yeah. This was my teacher. I hope you guys got something from this conversation, and I see you in the next video.
Thank you very
Goodbye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.